Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Final Bosses podcast. I am joined by my co-host, Ultimate Floyd. How are you doing, man?
Great. How are you doing?
Great, because we are having our very first guest. Say hello, Darren, from the Gaming Pilgrimage. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I actually didn't realize I was the first guest on this podcast. That's awesome. Holy crap.
You
I'm
are
honored to be
the
here.
very first one.
First guest indeed.
Crazy.
Uh-huh. So be proud, man. Swell up your chest in pride.
I will. It'll work really well for this audio format. I'll have my chest sticking straight out the entire time. Talk from my stomach. It'll be great.
Perfect. So, before we jump into things, why don't you introduce yourself? Get everyone acquainted in case they don't know who you are.
Certainly. So I am Darren. Some of you may know me from a video or two on Shintai's channel, which you're presumably viewing this podcast on. We did a couple of collaborations regarding the Tales of series.
Don't forget the Bloodborne video. That one.
That's right. We did the Bloodborne video.
That was
Talked
really
some
good.
Blood there. Fear of the Old Blood, all that. But I do YouTube reviews on my channel, The Gaming Pilgrimage. I primarily cover RPG games and retrospective style videos that take forever to come out, according to people that I know. But
I know how that feels.
Yeah, it's been getting pretty bad lately. People are eager for more content there, which they should be because it's been a while. So there should be actually a Fire Emblem Fates review coming out very, very soon on The Gaming Pilgrimage on YouTube, which will be my longest review ever, I believe. It's going to be a doozy.
I'm looking forward to that.
And as well, I also have a podcast.
Right?
Pardon?
All like the Fates, like all three.
All three in one.
Okay. Yeah, that would be a long review.
Yeah, that contributes to the length quite a bit. But I also have a podcast called Gaming Pilgrimage Podcast, which recently just featured a Mr. Shintai.
Oh.
So be sure to check that out because we get to talk about ink holes in that one.
When I saw the title, I was like, bravo, sir.
Did you listen to the out of context clip at the beginning?
Yes. That was perfect.
That's what he does. But that's it. That's it for my plug, though.
All right. So we're gonna go ahead and talk about our, what we've been playing recently. So honestly, if I'm being perfectly honest, I haven't been playing shit. All I've been doing is working on that fucking Undertale discussion. Because Ultimate Floyd and I recorded this Undertale discussion, and I think it's turned out really good. The original audio was like close to an hour, and I managed to cut it down to like just over like 30 minutes. But yeah,
that seems insane to me.
A tight edit, as it were.
Yeah, that's the thing. I have like a really rigorous audio editing process, which is the biggest reason why my videos take as long as they do. One, because the process itself takes a while, and two, I realize that it's going to be a bear, and I don't feel like doing it.
Fair enough.
But yeah, as far as like actually like playing games is concerned, I've only like been playing Undertale itself, obviously, because of the discussion, and I finally went back to Tales of Berseria. So, and that's pretty much it.
Really? So, yeah, because we haven't done a podcast in a while.
Actually, I think the last time we did an episode, I hadn't even beaten Zestiria yet, did I?
I don't think so, actually.
So, in that time, I actually finished Zestiria, which was, well, I'll get into that some other time.
Just the pause. Like you're just trying to think of the perfect word to sum up like how you feel, and like a single word, and just like
there is no single word for Zestiria, except for maybe mediocre, but
yeah. I could agree with that. I actually just recently did a poll on Twitter saying like, "Hey, I need to like get caught up on a bunch of my retrospectives." I did like a Tales one, a Fire Emblem one, and I'm really behind on both of those. I'm behind by the 2 newest releases, and so I was like, "Okay, which one should I get caught up on?" And a lot of people voted for Tales, and I was like, "Oh God, I have to go back to like my 20 something hour save of Zestiria and finish it."
See, like normally I would tell you it's not worth it, but the thing is you've already made a channel that a lot of your subscriber base is Tales fans, so they're gonna want that review from you. So it's like you put yourself in a corner, man. You're done.
Yeah, I mean, I started with Tales, so I feel like I kind of owe it to the series and people who watch the channel as that expectation.
You know, a lot of people like to give Legendia shit, but I honestly prefer Legendia over Zestiria.
I think you're going to see a new wave of support for Legendia post Zestiria in general. It can be the new game everyone dogs on.
I mean, I think it deserves it more than Legendia. I mean, I never really understood the hate for Legendia. Like, yeah, okay, compared to the other games in the series, it's definitely not as good. But I never thought like it was like a straight up like bad game.
No. Now, when like when Tales of Symphonia Dawn of the New World gets like some kind of reversal, then I'll be just like, no, sorry.
No, I think that game is forever going to be the shit stain of the series.
Did I ever tell you the story about how I got my co-host to try that game with me?
Do tell.
My buddy Brock. So my buddy Brock and I, we co-op a lot of the Tales games. And I was doing my retrospective videos. I was actually playing through them again with him, who would be playing them for the first time. And when I went to go start recording footage for, I think it was for Dawn of the New World, I got him to be on controls. And this is like literally a week after we finished Symphonia, and he was not having it. He was raging at like every point, just going like, what is with this kid? Like, he was losing it all the time, and like all the weird little like motion control gimmicks and all that. He was not having any of it.
I don't blame him. That game sucks.
You see its fair share of supporters though.
I have. Like, I remember, I distinctly remember there was this one kid that got super mad and butthurt in the comments of one of my videos. He was arguing with some dude, and he's like, Symphonia 1 will never be as good as Symphonia 2. And I was like, I can't. No, I can't. I'm not even going to respond to that. Yeah. I was like, I can't even respond to that. I'm like, because I know I'm not going to handle it. If I try to talk to this person, no, I can't even wrap my brain around that comment.
You're not even talking that guy off from the ledge. He already leapt.
Yeah.
He's midair. You're thinking about shouting out to him, but
he's airborne. Ultimate Floyd, what have you been playing recently?
Geez, I actually probably have been playing a lot since our last podcast, but I guess as far as more recent things, I've kind of starting like a Kingdom Hearts marathon of sorts.
Yeah, I noticed you on Twitter talking about it, and you've had some mixed opinions. Like,
okay, I'm gonna try to get through like all the games on the 1.5, 2.5 collection. I've not played any Kingdom Hearts games before, so I have like
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of a new thing for me. I like Kingdom Hearts 1 though. There is some frustrating parts to it, but I do like it overall. Like I do like the combat. I love exploring like the Disney worlds, and it's actually making me want to go back and like watch a lot of these movies, even some that I haven't actually seen before. Can be frustrating in places like the final boss. I think in this game is just cheap. Like it's just annoying. Like the second phase of the final boss, or not the second phase, it's like the third phase, I think. It's not like a one-on-one duel. That's the duel that everyone thinks it's kind of hard, or one of the harder fights in the game. That's like at least not optional. But it's basically like he just stands there and has like these orb attacks that he keeps throwing at you. And he doesn't stop as the farther you get into the fight. And you can't really dodge it because you're doing like the flight mode. Which I don't really like the flight parts in the game. Like I think they're kind of annoying, but I don't know, I just could not dodge this attack. I was kind of under leveled too because I accidentally chose the option near the beginning where your leveling is slower at the end of the game, but quicker in the early game, which the game didn't really explain that all that well, and I forgot to like look up to see what the choices did. But
Yeah, the game is super vague about it. It asks you these weird questions with these abstract answers, and you're just like, "What the fuck?" And then it's like, "Oh, the sun will rise, and then it will it will be sunset at the end of your journey." It's like, what the fuck is that supposed to mean?
And then they never used it again.
Okay, so it's not in Kingdom Hearts 2. Okay, that's good to know.
That.
No, it's not in 2.
But where was? Oh yeah, the boss. I think I said it took me like 30 tries, but I was over exaggerating. It did take me too long though to get past it because I just could not dodge. I couldn't properly dodge his attacks. So I had to like basically use that. What was it, the wind spell? I think it increases your defense. I'm pretty sure.
Oh yeah, yeah, that one.
Yeah, and then I had to tank the hits. I had to stand there and just constantly heal and tank the hits and just keep mashing attack to get through the boss. I don't know. I thought it was like kind of a poorly designed, cheap boss that really kind of soured me. Even though the fight before it I thought was really good, like the one-on-one battle that you did. But I don't know, it's kind of minor in the end. I still really did enjoy the game. The music in that game is phenomenal. Like I love the soundtrack.
Yeah, the music is awesome.
Yeah, so I did like it. I'm very interested to see what Kingdom Hearts 2 is going to be like. I've heard that's such like a jump in quality from the first one, but I have to play Chain of Memories first, which this game. So I'm playing this game now. I'm like halfway through it, and like this game's so weird.
Yeah, I expect to say that a lot. For the whole series.
Because it's kind of important plot-wise to the second game. You kind of have to play it, or at least watch like a lot of the cutscenes in it.
Yeah. What's even weirder is that originally it was a GBA title.
Yeah, it's...
So imagine like oh, this Kingdom Hearts 1, Kingdom Hearts 2, both are PS2 games. Oh wait, you didn't play the GBA game?
Yeah, so I mean, like a lot of people talk about how convoluted the story is and like the lore in Kingdom Hearts, but the first game is not too bad. I actually kind of like the story in the first game. It's not too complex, and it's it's a nice little story. But then the ending, the ending is pretty poor though. It doesn't have a lot of resolution to it. But
they need that sequel bait, man.
I was just about to say, you're going to say that a lot about the endings of many Kingdom Hearts games, that there's not a lot of resolution to it.
See, Chain of Memories, though, this is where I'm starting to see where it's going to start to get kind of convoluted. Like, already they're throwing all this shit at me, like the whole environment I'm in the first place, like memories and all this shit, and dreaming, and the organization they're throwing in there, and all this shit. I'm just like, oh god.
Yeah. Chain of Memories was like the beginning of the end, so to speak, as far as the writing was concerned.
You'll also have to go through both stories to get the full picture.
That's what I've heard too. Yeah, you play as Riku, right?
Mm-hmm. Although his decks are predetermined, so that it makes it going through a lot quicker.
Okay, yeah. Like the card battle system, I kind of like it. I don't know. It's weird. It's like I like some of the bosses. You really have to kind of think about your deck of cards and which cards are going to be more effective and which combos you can use with the different cards. So there's actually a cool amount of, like a good amount of strategy to the game that I kind of like. But the normal encounters I think are probably a little too strategic for them. Maybe I should have probably played on normal mode though. I played on easy mode because I just wanted to. I wasn't sure about the game and if I was gonna like it. So I should have played on normal mode. But I don't know. It's weird because the game's almost like a dungeon crawler in a weird way, where you actually have to use cards to create rooms, and they'll have different like effects for the rooms. Like there'll be more enemies in a certain room, or there'll be like a hid treasure chest in one room, or a Moogle shop in another. I don't know. I kind of like it. It's such a weird game. I don't know what to think of it.
It's at least unique. Like
it's unique. It's got some cool ideas for sure.
It does have cool ideas, but It's also hampered by the fact that it was originally a GBA title, and it's a GBA title that was basically recreated in 3D, but with all of the same limitations.
Yeah, so like it can be a little hard to like because you have to basically run around these 3D environments, dodging enemy attacks, but at the same time you have to be constantly looking at your cards and sorting through them. So it's kind of hard to kind of juggle everything at once. It can get a little frustrating at times.
That's
I also
definitely a
found that was
problem.
the start of one of kind of my issues with the Kingdom Hearts series was that with Chain of Memories and going forward, once you start going to the individual Disney worlds, you become less interested and engaged in those stories, and it kind of feels like you're always rushing to the next big boss fight to see the cutscene that actually pushes like the Kingdom Hearts story forward, not the Disney World story forward, where it's kind of different in Kingdom Hearts 1, where you kind of have a better combination of the two.
Noticing that with Chain of Memories, it's like it's the Disney stuff is so like it's hardly I don't know, it's like there's not too much to it with like the Disney parts, and it's like reuses all the same worlds from the first game. Um, I don't know, it's weird. I don't know. This game's weird. I'm gonna push through it. I'm gonna finish it to get to the second one, but it's I don't know. It's an odd game.
Well, the second one's story gets even weirder, but thankfully the gameplay is way better.
I've heard also the gummy ship stuff, which I kind of hated in Kingdom Hearts 1.
Yeah, the gummy ship stuff is way better in the second game too. Like it's actually like feels more like like a shmup. Like it's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm just worried. The one thing I'm worried about is the beginning of Kingdom Hearts 2. I've heard like it's a slog, like a 3 hour just slog.
Yeah, it's not great.
I think it kind of gets blown out of proportion because it's really not that long, but it's very different than the beginning of the rest of the series.
Okay. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to the second one for sure. But that's about all I've been playing. I've been playing a bunch of other stuff, but that's the main thing right now.
Cool. And what about you, Darren?
Well, I too have not been playing a whole bunch this week. I've been preparing a lot for a upcoming trip I'm doing to Japan. So I've been
Nice.
getting all that in order, get myself organized. But I have still, from the last time we spoke, Shintai, I've been playing a lot of Sonic Mania, which is still incredible. Still can't get enough.
I still need to play that.
Yep, I've already beaten it like 7 or 6 times at this point.
Jesus.
Oh wow.
I keep going back. It's like I find with a lot of the classic 2D Sonic games, it's really easy to revisit them over time as you get faster, you know the secrets, you know the layouts, and you kind of almost start speed running it naturally just through how they designed the game. And it's still a lot of fun to go back to, and it's probably like the best Sonic game.
Okay. See, I'm not a huge Sonic fan, but that game looks really good. I really want to play it. I definitely should.
It's like the smartest Sonic game, if I could describe it in one way, because like I always find that 2D Sonic lives or dies based on the level design. And that game, Sonic Mania, really excels in the level design. It has really smart layouts that really reward you for exploring or going off the beaten path or being creative with your skill set.
See, I don't give a single fuck about Sonic.
I kind of like you. I'm kind of like you.
So I'm asking as someone who genuinely is just kind of about Sonic. Would I like this game? I still like 2D platformers though. Like I still love Mario.
Is it Sonic in general or like 2D Sonic you're specifically kind of with?
No, in general.
Because I always found that when it went 3D, I definitely lost interest. But like I grew up with Sonic CD on Windows. Was like kind of like one of those video games I played a lot as a kid. So I understand like playing 2D Sonic. Like if you've never liked the 2D games, I can't see this game changing your mind. But if you kind of had like an appreciation for them or you kind of get it, you'd probably get into it. But I just think it's like a really well-made retro throwback. Like I know a lot of games have done that. Like we've had Mega Man 9 and 10. We've had like Kickstarter games that have tried to do it. But I think Sonic Mania does it the best.
Okay, because I mean, I don't really feel particularly one way or the other about the 2D Sonic games. I never really played them much. but everyone has just been like raving about Sonic Mania, and it kind of makes me want to like give it a chance, even if I'm not like really a Sonic fan at all.
I mean, you could do the safe option and always pick it up when it comes out on Steam relatively soon, and you could refund it if it's not to your liking.
That's true. Actually, that's a great idea.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
Because the whole game is only like 4 hours long too, and I think you get up to almost like 2.5 hours of game time with the Steam refund. It's like 2 hours or 2.5, so you can get through a decent amount of the game before coming to that conclusion.
Cool. Yeah, that is something that's something to consider.
And I know we talked about this pre-recording, but can we talk about Death Note?
Yes.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So today I was prepping a Gundam to build, one of my Gundam models, and I wanted something to put on the background. And to my surprise, the Netflix Death Note movie is out right now for your viewing pleasure. So I decided to throw it on because I wanted to know. So
all right.
Death
So
Note.
so have you any?
Yes.
Okay. So have you seen the anime or read the manga or what's
Both.
what's okay? Same. I've both read the manga and watched the anime. So how was this movie?
It was weird. It was a very, very weird adaptation in both how they handle the setting, the characters, and kind of just the overall story. A lot of people have said this in various online reviews, and I'll probably be echoing that sort of sentiment, but Death Note takes a lot of radical changes with characters and ideas from the original. So I'm going to ask both you guys, what's the best part about Death Note?
I don't think Ultimate Floyd has seen it.
I have not seen it. I kind of want to though.
All right. Well,
I think out of because Floyd's not like super big into anime, but I'd say Death Note it would be an anime you'd like.
I've read about it. It's like up my alley. I think I would like it.
So personally, I think Death Note is slightly overrated just because it was such a hugely popular anime for such a long time.
But that's not what I'm asking. I'm just asking you, what's the best part about Death Note?
Oh,
the best aspect of the show.
L has to be. For
Expand
me,
on that a bit more. What's the core interesting thing about Death Note?
The rivalry between Light and L.
Well, guess what's not in this adaptation?
What?
The whole point of Death Note is like the cat and mouse game that Light and L play, and that is completely removed from this adaptation.
No. That's bad.
Barely expand on it. It's so minimalistic in that way of going on like why these two guys are intellectual equals, but they don't really go into it. Because the thing with this adaptation is that Light's not like a super genius like he is in the original story. He's kind of just like he's not dumb because he's a smart kid, but he doesn't act very intelligently, and it seems like he doesn't really pre-plan as much as
he's not on that next level like sociopath that the original Light was.
Let's say this: the original Light always had a keikaku and was always making sure things went according to it. This Light doesn't got a keikaku. It just goes with it.
But by the way, keikaku means plan.
Thanks for telling me. I had no idea what you guys were talking about.
It's a meme where there is I don't even know if it was real or not, but there's like an image of Light and he's laughing, and at the bottom it says like everything is according to keikaku, and at the top it says translators note keikaku means plan.
Spread. And people have done like the reverse where it's like everything is going according to plan. This is like translators know plan means keikaku. But yeah, it's weird. Like one of the weirdest things is the focus on Light Turners, because he's American now, and he's
his name is Light Turner. Oh, that's
it doesn't work at all. Yeah, I don't mind them making it an American setting, but just the name they chose for that is like, yeah, it doesn't really mesh at
They
all.
shouldn't have called him Light at all. They should have just completely changed his name at that point.
Because at the point he's at in the series, in the movie, it's just a one. I think it's an hour and a half. It's a pretty average length movie, but he doesn't really act like Light, so I don't see the value in making him the same character in a way. Like it could just been another person gets the Death Note, but I will say the thing that saves a lot of this is William Dafoe's performance as Ryuk.
Of course.
That's what
He
I've heard. I've heard
definitely-
that's the strong point of
he
it.
steals the show like all the time, and he's I find he's a lot more intimidating than the manga and anime counterpart to Ryuk.
Yeah, Ryuk wasn't really meant to be intimidating though. Like he has his intimidating moments, but he was.
I would say it's more he feels more like a demon in this version, or like a
Okay.
death god. He definitely, there's like a tension when he's around.
Okay.
And he kind of seems more like the devil on his shoulder more than kind of just a guy that's just like there to observe and have fun, like he is in the original.
Okay, that actually does sound pretty interesting, to be fair.
Yeah, and they also focus a lot more on what was the girl he was sort of not really with at all, but with for
Misa.
appearances, because I
Yeah.
believe her name's Mia in this adaptation.
The original
And,
was Misa.
Yeah, I think they just call her Mia here, but they focus on her and Light's relationship a lot, and it's kind of like one of the focal points of the entire plot, which is radically different than the original series. And
Yeah, in the original, she's kind of like a throwaway girl. Like Light doesn't really even like give a fuck about her. He's just using her.
Yeah, it's really weird because they're trying to develop this relationship, and he at one point uses the Death Note to impress her, which is really
Oh
a weird
god,
scene. It's a really awkward scene.
It's like, hey baby, you want to see me kill some dudes? Like, what the fuck? Impress her,
Dude. You more or less nailed the scene, and it totally works.
What the fuck?
It needs to be seen to be believed. I think the best scene in the whole thing is the very start. We first meets Ryuk, and he grabs the Death Note. He's in a room. He's in the detention room, and Ryuk starts appearing, and he can hear him, and he doesn't know what he's seeing. He starts freaking out, and as he's running away from him, like papers are flying everywhere. Like there's a thunderstorm going outside, and he goes to like leave the detention hall, and the door's locked, and he's just screaming and freaking out for a solid minute.
What the fuck?
And I feel like this scene is going to be memed for like anything. Like it's so weird just hearing him like just flip out for a minute just over this guy appearing. It's almost hysterical watching.
Because the thing, like, when Light saw Ryuk, he didn't freak out that much.
Yeah, this one he flips his shit.
But the thing is, Light not freaking out actually made sense because Light realized that what he had was like this otherworldly thing. So when Ryuk appeared, he was shocked, but at the same time, he was like, you know what? It's not that weird, considering this is a fucking book that kills people.
Yeah,
Which you know, his reaction made a lot of sense.
Yeah, so I just think it seems like almost overacted, the reaction that the actor portrays. But
Shit.
I want to discuss one more thing before we move on from discussing Death Note, because it's out there on Netflix with anyone who has access to that service for them to watch and make their own opinions on. I want to talk about L.
Oh god, did they fuck up L?
I feel like they don't use L as much as they should, given
It's
how
just as bad.
He's
such an integral
he is to the story.
He's so important.
Because I kind of like how the actor seems to have at least seen some parts. Like I feel like they must have watched some Death Note or read it prior to performing their roles, because it seems like he picks up on some of the mannerisms that the original L had, and he kind of has those, which are good, but they drastically change how he reacts to situations. And it seems like he's a lot more emotional than what you would expect of the original L.
That's the complete opposite of L. L is so stoic and like cool-headed, but also kind of weird and eccentric. So like
they have the weird and eccentric part, but he quickly goes from that. There's around the halfway point, he starts to lose his cool a lot, and it felt really out of character. And you also miss out on all the weird kind of yaoi stuff going on between Light and L that a lot of fangirls enjoy from the original series that a lot of people used to make fan art of, like when they're handcuffed together or they're drawing each other with towels. You don't get any of that here.
I forgot about that. Oh, shit.
Yeah, that happens. Aren't they like handcuffed together for like 48 hours or something?
Yeah, it was something like. And then they have that fucking fight, which was actually like a pretty decent fight that they had.
Yeah, it's weird. Ultimately, it feels like they blow through way too much of the plot and they leave it open ended, so there could definitely be a follow up. But I'm really curious to see if they'll consider this one as a success.
So I noticed someone on Twitter had said like that Light in this movie is a more believable character.
Well,
but
he's more like a normal kid.
See, but
in comparison to Light Yagami being like a super genius with a god complex.
Right, but that's what made Light an interesting character. Sure,
Yeah.
Maybe this new Light is more believable and more realistic, but who cares if he's not
that
as
doesn't always
interesting?
equal out to being good.
Right.
Because he
I
definitely has
yeah.
some aspects carried over where he really believes in what he's doing. And he has like a sort of he feels justified in what he's doing, but it's definitely not the same way that the original Light feels justified, because he's always going towards his plan of like a perfect utopia of doing this, whereas this Light's more simple-minded and thinking, I'm getting rid of the bad guys, I'm making the world a better place. If I don't do it, who will?
Right. Well, with Light, it was more. He had like more of like a grand plan in mind.
Oh, he had a much bigger keikaku. This guy, no keikaku.
The original Light, big keikaku. This guy, small keikaku.
Yeah, but I'll leave it at that for now and let other people form their opinions by viewing it, because it's out there. It's relatively short and it's interesting enough that I'd be very curious to see how people approach this without any knowledge of Death Note. So, for instance, Floyd, if you check it out, I'd be very curious to hear your thoughts, because it's interesting.
Yeah, so the director of this, I'm actually a pretty big fan of. His name's Adam Wingard. He's done a couple movies that I really loved. He tends to do a lot of horror movies. He did You're Next, and then one called The Guest, which I highly recommend to anyone that hasn't seen it. Like, it's this really great 80s throwback kind of horror movie that's like fucking awesome. So I was always kind of interested in this Death Note movie, but I mean, I'm gonna definitely try to. Well, I don't know if I should maybe just watch it instead of, or well, not instead of, but before watching the anime, just like watch the movie and see what I think.
It'd be really interesting to get that fresh perspective on it, because you definitely see a lot of the director's horror background in a lot of the directing and shots, especially with how they handle Ryuk.
Yeah, I definitely want to see it.
Well, I think it'd be really interesting to see the movie first and then the anime.
Yeah.
I think that'd be an interesting perspective for you.
You wouldn't have anything to compare it to, so you wouldn't be like,
No.
Light didn't act this way, or L didn't do this, and that. Then you can go back and then you'd have the maybe a more fair comparison.
We're gonna go ahead and jump into some juicy news. Now, this first bit of news is kind of funny for Floyd and I, but apparently there's going to be a 3D remake of Secret of Mana, which is a game that neither of us like very much, but everyone else in the fucking world.
Okay, I'm not going to be unpopular here.
Everyone else in the fucking world loves Secret of Mana, but
I don't get it.
All three of us. Great.
Wait, you don't like it either?
I think it's an okay game, but when people say it's one of the greatest RPGs of all time, I go, what are you talking about?
Finally! Because, okay, just for funsies. So, I was randomly talking to a friend of mine. He calls himself the Wanderer from the Past. Used to be known as RPG Swagman, which doesn't roll off the tongue nearly as well. So, Greg, if you're listening, just gonna call you Greg. We were talking, and I was like, all right, I gotta go to sleep, man. I'll talk to you later. And he's like, wait, before you go. And I'm like, yeah, what's up, man? Fuck you for saying that about Secret of Mana. That game's a masterpiece. And I was like, ah, shit.
Well, you should respond, Greg, this is for you. If any RPG has to pause the entire game to display an animation for an item going off or magic going off, it is not a masterpiece, sir. It is interrupting my gameplay.
And then having to go through those terrible menus and
the
bad.
innovative ring menu system.
The thing that just bothers me the most is the way that the attack system works. Like, I have to wait like a full solid like couple of seconds after every single swing. Like, otherwise you do like 1 point of damage. Fuck off. That is so annoying.
Guess what happens to you while you're waiting? Enemies will pause the game and fling magic at you.
Blech.
Just how do you have to grind to like level up the magic and just like the hit to collision detection was like really off too. Like
I think it's one of those games that came out at the right place at the right time. Like it came out the height of like the RPGs, beginning of the RPG boom. It was a co-op game back on a system that had a lot of brothers and friends and siblings playing together, and it also featured like really beautiful sprite graphics and relatively really good soundtrack. So I think it just had all those things going for it at the right place at the right time, even though it is plagued with a lot of issues that build on each other.
Yeah,
that's true. So that's the interesting thing with the remake. Maybe this game will be good now if they can fix some of those problems.
I also heard that the translation was also troubled, like a lot of Super Nintendo games. The person in charge was Ted Woosley, and he was also the one in charge of Chrono Trigger's translation. And both games kind of suffered a similar issue where he would write up the translation beforehand and then come to find out that the Super Nintendo wouldn't, like the cartridges wouldn't fit his script because the Japanese kanji are able to get across a lot more information than our Romanized language. So huge chunks of his translation, huge chunks of his script had to be lopped off in order for the game to actually have a proper translation. But yeah, Secret of Mana fucking sucks. I don't care.
Yeah, I might give this a chance, but I mean, I looked at the gameplay of it. I hate how the graphics look, honestly. I much prefer the way the original game looks.
The sprites hold up really well, and they're the best sprite work on the Super Nintendo, and it's kind of what the game's known for. I kind of just wish they did like a Sonic Mania approach and just kind of refined that a bit, and just made it so it supported higher resolutions or something.
Yeah, that would be nice. That. I mean, I think the biggest disappointment for Secret of Mana for me is like, when I envisioned in my head before I played it what it would play like, I was thinking, oh, this is going to be like Zelda: A Link to the Past, but with like RPG elements and multiple weapons, and that's totally
Have you ever played the first game?
No.
Like, because it's all part of a series of that has a title I cannot pronounce properly, because it's a Final Fantasy Adventure. Yeah, Seiken Sendetsu.
On the original Game Boy, right?
Yeah, and that plays basically like a Zelda clone with RPG elements. And I'd argue that game, from a gameplay standpoint, holds up a lot better than Secret of Mana, and it's really confusing that they never stuck with that.
Interesting.
I did play Legend of Mana on the PS1, and I remember that game being kind of weird, but still pretty fun.
It's a lot more playable than Secret.
So I've also heard the third game is really good too. Second Densetsu 3, which there's fan translations out there for it.
Yeah,
too.
that plays more like there's a lot less waiting for sure.
Yeah, I think I remember playing that a little bit, and I remember thinking, "Oh, thank God, there's no wait system in this one." But I do remember,
I haven't played it.
But I have heard a lot of like mixed opinions on that one. I think a lot of people who fucking love Secret of Mana shat on it because it wasn't more like it.
And they didn't have the nostalgia for it.
Probably, I don't know. I've either heard like it's one of the best in the series or it's one of the worst. So I don't know what to think, but I'd have to play it myself.
I know apparently Terra Enigma is a kind of a similar kind of action hack and slash RPG on the Super Nintendo. That's apparently a lot like, or at least it looks a lot better than like Secret of Mana. I've always wanted to play that game, so I never had the chance.
Yeah, that one's made by Quintet. That's made by the people responsible for Illusion of Gaia, which is also a really good game. ActRaiser and Soul Blazer. Soul Blazer also being like basically Zelda with RPG elements.
Soul Blazer I've played. That game I like quite a bit too. Illusion of Gaia is decent as well.
Yeah, Quintet made some really good stuff before they just kind of disappeared. I guess I'll try out this remake. I don't know. Maybe. Whatever. Let's move on to something more important. Yakuza Kiwami 2. So I know all of us here are big Yakuza fans. So how fucking hype are you guys to replay Yakuza 2 with Yakuza 6's graphics?
Pretty excited. I mean,
there's a long pause. I'm like, nobody's.
I was waiting for Lloyd to speak.
I was waiting for him to speak. So
let him go first. This podcast.
Okay, next time I will have to say, okay, you say something.
No, we'll just have a long 1 minute pause.
It'll be just like a Kingdom Hearts cutscene where characters pause between lines.
oh god,
that's true. That does. Oh man, yeah, it happens. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, like definitely need to play Kiwami first. I'm excited, but I don't know. I feel like I'm a little burnt out on Yakuza right now. It's just like not something I play right away. Yeah, I love the series.
Rapid fire release schedule this year.
It's getting a little crazy, but I'm still down for it. Like I don't have a problem with it. It's just I'm a little burnt out on the series at the moment, but still excited for it.
Yeah, but like we're probably not going to get this game until like next year.
I get to punch tigers in HD. Like, what more does a man need?
What more do you want?
Also, every Yakuza game coming out now is getting like a fancy collector's edition with stuff. I want like bookends, but it's Kiryu punching a tiger.
Yes!
I hope
that'd be amazing.
I actually saw a lot of people being really negative about this announcement, which really bummed me out.
What? Why?
Why?
People hold Yakuza 2 as this holy grail title for the series because it's a really good damn game, and it's like the end of an era of like kind of using the weird fixed angle views for the city. It had the last use of like the PS2 style of graphics, and a lot of people seem to really like that, and a lot of people are also lamenting on how Yakuza 6 is locked to 30, or it's at 30 in its current state, and they're unsure if how well this remake will run.
Well, I mean, first off,
which is a bit silly considering we haven't even seen gameplay.
First off, if they're really bummed about it, I mean, go fucking play the original again. It's not that big of a deal.
And they did another release of the original.
Well, yeah, there was the HD collection, but we never got that.
No, there was more shipments of the PS2 version, so you should be able to buy Yakuza 2 for the PS2 on Amazon for like $40 right now.
Yeah, that is true. So
yeah,
they did reprint it. So I mean, you have no real reason to complain. And yeah, there hasn't even been any footage for the game. And even if it does run at 30, I mean, is it really that big of a deal? I mean, obviously 60 is preferred, but I'm sure the game will still play fine at 30.
And why would you swear off punching tigers by frame rate alone?
Agreed. Oh, that moment, that moment is magical.
Or for the final boss fight, with possibly like a subtle remix for the final track, having a better view of that HD. I think it's kind of hard to pass up on.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what people are complaining about. This is gonna be kick ass. This is gonna be awesome.
I mean, it's a really good time to be a Yakuza fan. And then 6 will be out next year.
I thought it was coming out this year, but like late in the year.
Oh, okay. I don't know what the release date is. It could be. I mean, if it is, that's frankly ridiculous. That's 3 Yakuza games in 1 year, and that's
my god,
that's a wealth of riches right there.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure when 6 comes out, but
But
I already have it pre-ordered.
Have gone from a drought to just going to a tsunami of releases.
Yeah, although we'll still never get any of those samurai games.
Maybe one day they'll remake them.
Maybe, but I kind of doubt it.
We'll always have Dead Souls.
Oh, fuck Dead Souls.
The one we got.
Dead Souls nearly killed the series. They were like, well, they didn't like this game, so I guess they don't like Yakuza anymore. It's like, no, this was like a
they didn't
weird,
pick up this game
shitty
with
spin-off
with the railgun. They don't like Yakuza.
Oh god, it's so stupid. It's like, I don't even know, like, if they came out with like Chocobo Racing, it's like, and they did shit, it's like, well, I guess they don't like Final Fantasy anymore. So dumb. Alright, and the next topic, which I will leave to you guys, because I don't know shit about Half-Life. So, apparently there's some blog post about Half-Life 3, like, supposedly this guy pretty much laid out what was going to be the plot of Half-Life 3 or something. So yeah, you guys talk about that, because I don't know shit about Half-Life.
Yeah, so the writer, his name's Mark Laidlaw. He wrote Half-Life and Half-Life 2, and he was with Valve for a long time, but he left. I forget when he left. It's a while ago now, though. But basically, he put a blog post up of this massive like plot dump, but he changed character names. So you kind of had to do a little bit of work for yourself to figure out who he's talking about with certain characters. But it's basically the plot of what was going to be Half-Life 2 Episode 3, because Half-Life 2 wasn't just like one game. There was like 3 episodes they were going to do after it. And the second episode ended on a massive cliffhanger. And basically, we never got that third game because Valve they started doing, like, Steam got really big for them. So that was like their main focus. And now it's basically, what this means is that we're never going to get another Half-Life game. It's pretty much dead in the water, and they're just going to be always focusing on Steam. And I think they announced some collectible card game a little while back, which is like, ugh. But yeah, it's kind of depressing news for a lot of people, but at the same time, at least it gives a little bit of closure on that trilogy. And it actually sounds pretty cool. I read through the plot. There's some cool stuff there. It sounded like the game could have been really cool. Some of the environments and some of like the time manipulation stuff that would have been in the game. But yeah, it's just crazy that it's like people have wanted it for so long, and then he just completely puts the whole story out on his website.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. I didn't read through the whole thing because the more I read, the more I forgot how much I'd like to see a Half-Life 3. Like, kind of the further I was reading in, I was just like, is making that wound feel fresh again.
No, it's depressing.
But I think at the very least, we'll never see this version of Half-Life 3 or Half-Life 2 Episode 3. So I always think there's the possibility that one day they'll have the right engine. There'll be the right place and time for them. I've always felt like they've been waiting for the next big thing to push Half-Life onto, but it's hard to say now because it's been so long. A lot of people have speculated VR would be the way they'd want to do it.
I just want it in some fashion. I do wonder though if people might try to mod Half-Life 2 and create this with this, use the story that he wrote out here.
If there's any community or fan base that would be willing to do that, it's this one, considering how much effort has gone into previous mods and uses of the source engine for creating just anything. So I would not be surprised. Didn't someone perfectly recreate the original alpha that was leaked of Half-Life 2?
So I'm pretty sure, yeah.
We've had everything from remakes of games to like lost areas being restored to previous versions. So I don't see why they wouldn't do this at some point, especially because it lays out like environments and possible areas. I could totally see people trying to do that. That'd be frankly awesome.
I think it could happen. I'm definitely gonna play it like right away if something like that happens. But
and to you, Shintai, go use $5 during the next Steam sale and buy all the Half-Life games.
Oh, I already own all the Half-Life games. I just haven't
step
played
one
them.
complete.
They're all in my library.
I feel like anyone who owns Steam has them. Like they've been so cheap for so long.
Yeah, on the last sale, like they were all like 50 cents each. So I was just like, fuck it. I got Half-Life, Half-Life 2, Half-Life 2 Episode 1, and Half-Life 2 Episode 2. I also have Half-Life 2 Lost Coast. I don't know what the hell that is.
Oh yeah, I remember that. I haven't played that in years.
A bit of a demo, a test for Half-Life.
Okay. But yeah,
Half-Life 2 is like probably my favorite first-person shooter. I haven't played one since that I've liked more than it.
What about Metroid Prime?
I almost don't consider that a first-person shooter. It's weird. I almost consider that like a. I mean, I guess it is, isn't it? Although I don't know.
Technically, it is.
I guess technically, I more consider it like a first-person adventure game.
That's the official genre.
All right. You want to move on, or you guys still have anything to say about it?
Play Half-Life.
Play Half-Life. Yeah, not too much else to say, not really. But it's just pretty big news because people have been like wanting some kind of closure on this or some kind of announcement or anything, and finally it looks like there's at least something out there.
At least they avoided the Mega Man Legends situation in which a third game was in development and fans had ideas and feedback going into it. Then Capcom pulled the rug from under them.
Oh god. Oh god.
That's forever going to be the most depressing game-related thing that's ever happened for me.
It'll always be burned in my mind. I bought a frickin' 3DS for that game, and then I sold it after they canceled it. Original model 3DS.
Man, I fucking love Legends so much. Like, what 3 getting canceled was like a dagger into my heart.
Not even the demo. They didn't even release a demo.
I know.
Supposed to.
They promised us. They didn't do shit. And then Capcom turned around and blamed fans. It's like, oh, if maybe the fans cared enough. It's like, fuck you.
If you really cared about it, you would have had this many people on our website every day.
This is pissing me off. Let's move on. So now we're going to move on to questions. You guys sent us a shit ton. So we'll try to get through them. This one's by Bufudine. He asks, since you've both seen Kaiji, what are your favorite gambling games in the series? Any one of them can count, even if they're exclusive to the show. Also, what are your takes on its art style compared to others in anime? Now, okay, I've seen Kaiji to completion. Ultimate Floyd, I know you've seen a few episodes. I don't know if you actually saw it.
I never ended up finishing it. I got close, but I actually, reading this, I had no idea. Like, I guess the manga, there's different games compared to the show.
No, the show has different games in it. I don't know how far you got, though. There's like 2 seasons of the show.
Is there games that are in the manga but not in the show ever?
Yes.
Okay.
Because the manga keeps going, and I think the anime only covers like a certain amount from the manga.
It's been a long time since I've seen it. I mean, I'm always gonna remember there's like that rock paper scissors one, right? I think that might have been the first game.
Yeah,
right?
that's the first game, and they dwell on that one for a while.
I mean, I guess that's what really got me into the show. That's like I guess that would be my favorite. This is reminding me though. I need to go back and finish it. I'm pretty sure I was near the end. I don't know why I stopped watching.
Yeah, I think that one for me was the most memorable. So yeah, I think I'll stick with that one too. Like that one, like there were some other really cool ones that happened later on, but like that one always stuck out to me as being the most memorable. Probably because like it's the very first one, and like that's when the show was still like new and fresh. So I was like, holy shit, this fucking crazy rock paper scissor game. Darren, have you seen Kaiji?
Does Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 0 count?
Unfortunately not.
Because they do
Season
gambling
0?
games there. They light people on fire in one of them.
I did not know that.
Season 0 is like a very different show compared to Yu-Gi-Oh! It's when like the pharaoh inside of him is like super evil, and all their games are like weird, mentally scarring gambling games.
It's actually kind of interesting.
It is. A lot of people kind of wish that's the direction the series went, but no, I haven't seen Kaiji.
It's on Crunchyroll. Fucking watch it. It's really good.
I can't. I got to catch up on 2 weeks worth of Dragon Ball Super.
No, you don't. Fuck Super. All right. Wait. Bufudan also asked though.
The art style.
Yeah, on the art style.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that drew me to the show. I know a lot of people complain about it. It's like they say that the art style looks shitty and it looks weird, but honestly, I like it. I like how unique it looks. It's part of that show's identity. So I don't know how you felt about it.
I mean, I can see where people are coming from. It didn't bother me. I think the one thing that does kind of are the noses on the characters.
Yeah, what's going on with people's noses?
Yeah, that is weird. I don't like that, but
sure.
I'm just looking at screenshots
don't mind it.
People's noses.
Yeah, I mean, I do get that, like, it is kind of weird looking, so, especially when you compare it to, like, most modern anime, but honestly, like, I really feel that it's part of that show's identity. It gives it its own unique flavor, and I really like it. I honestly don't think it deserves most of the shit it gets, just because it looks unorthodox.
Also, I want to throw out there, while searching for images of Kaiji, one of the first images was a Kaiji versus Yu-Gi-Oh! YouTube video thumbnail, which led me to a mixed opening of Kaiji and Yu-Gi-Oh! Combined to the original American Yu-Gi-Oh! Opening. So I think my analogy previously must have been on point.
It was pretty close. So next question is by 222277.
Yeah, he's a good friend of mine.
Okay. He says, not a troll question, but seriously, why do you guys continue to play series you don't like? You hated Uncharted and Heavy Rain, etc., but you guys seem to know a lot about you guys seem to know a lot about all of them, their flaws, etc. Why continue to put yourself through that if you hate them? I'll let you go first, Floyd.
I answered actually in your video. I'm pretty sure. I forget what I said exactly, but I don't know. Part of it is kind of like I feel some kind of obligation for the channel if I start a series. I kind of want to finish it just to give my full perspective on them. And then even if I hate a game, I find it very hard to like put it down. Like I feel like I need to see it through to the end despite hating it. And I like to always give chances to games, even though I think I'm going to hate them. So like David Cage games, I pretty much hate every one, but it's like, I feel like, well, he's got to make a good game sometime at some point.
He'll get it right eventually.
I keep playing it and, I end up hating them, but I don't know. I think the big thing for me is just I find it so hard to put a game down. I feel like if I don't finish a game, it's like, I don't know, it just bugs me for some reason. I just can't let it go. It's like this bad habit that I need to break from, but it's just so hard to do it.
Well, first off, for me with Heavy Rain, I actually liked Heavy Rain the first time I played it. It wasn't until going back to it when I realized, oh, wait a minute, there's actually like huge problems with the story. Like when I went back to it, it wasn't as obvious to me the first time I went through it, but going through it again, I was like, holy shit, wait a minute, this story makes no fucking sense. There's so many huge plot holes. So at least with Heavy Rain in that respect, you know, part of why I know so much about it is because, yeah, the first time I went through it, you know, I thought it was a good game, and then replaying it and then realizing how fucking bad it was. But as far as like going through games in general that I don't like, I don't go into games wanting to hate them. Like I try to give games a fair shot, and it just so happens that somewhere down the line playing the game, I realize, okay, I don't like this game. But there's also that sense of curiosity of like, how bad does it get? Like, what bullshit am I missing? Like, and this is, I think it's also, because you mentioned Uncharted, I think with something like that, it propels me to play through it more, because it's like, well, what about this game that everyone else likes that I'm not getting? So,
Yeah.
I've definitely
I think
had
that's
that
part
before.
of it. What about you, Darren? How do you feel about this question?
Well, sometimes you turn around on a game when you like, for instance, there's some games that have like a really, really poor opening. There's some games where you play the first bit and you're really not into it. I can think of like Chrono Cross. When I first played that, I really didn't get the battle system. I didn't understand the story, but like the more I went in, the more I kind of got it, and the more I feel like I gained from that. There's also some games that that are so popular and so big that you have to know. You want to know why they're getting all the praise, and I feel like you can't really get that fully until you force yourself to play it all the way through.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So next question is by Epic Anime Requiem, and he's a good friend of mine. He's been
cool
subscribed. He's been subscribed for a while. He asked, "What are your thoughts on the Kingdom Hearts series and the East series?" I think we already talked about Kingdom Hearts enough. So we'll just talk about the East series. And I'm not like super into the East series like a friend of mine is. Like I mentioned him earlier, Greg.
Yeah, he
My
loves
friend,
them.
fucking Greg, like adores the East series like no one else I've ever seen. I definitely don't have that level of admiration for the series, but I do really like the series, and I think that for the most part, the games are really good. Like, I don't think I'd ever put like an East game in like a top 10 list or anything like that, but it's a very consistently good and solid series that I've always very consistently enjoyed. What about you, Floyd?
I love these series actually. I really enjoy it. I haven't played all of them yet. I'm looking forward to the 8th one. I still need to play 7.
Oh, I like 7 a lot, actually.
I
7
think that's
might
actually
be
the
my
only one I'm
favorite.
out of the 7's I think the only one I haven't played out of the. Well, no, there's weird ones like the what was that? The Ark of Napishtim. Was that
That's
Oh yeah,
number was
that
that?
one's
six.
East
That's
6.
6, yeah.
6. Okay, so yeah, I haven't played that. But I like the series quite a bit. A part of me feels like before I played them, I might have been like I look at the Trail series, for instance, and I've never been a big fan of that series. I've talked about this a bunch before, but it's just not my thing. But so I kind of like think, oh, maybe I'm not a Falcom fan, but you know what? I really like the East series. It's more my thing. I love the combat in these games. The stories are never anything amazing, but I think they're all enjoyable for the most part. And I actually even love the first 2 games. I know a lot of people don't like the bumping battle system where you have to bump into enemies. I thought it was interesting. I actually thought it was kind of fun. I think those 2 games are
grinding.
like I actually had a lot of fun with those first 2 games. I was kind of shocked how much I enjoyed them, but yeah, I like the series. I pretty much buy every game that comes out.
Did you play East Salcetta on the Vita?
One's really good too. I think Oath of Felghana is my favorite though. I think that one, I just really like the length of that one, and just I think the combat was really good in it. But I think if I played East 7, that one might be my favorite if I'd played it.
That's
yeah.
both that E7 is incorrect. Both of them. So I'll step forward here. The correct answer is Ys Origin is the best Ys game. So
that one is really good. I like that one a lot
slap
too.
that down on the table. You got your 3 characters that you all control one at a time. You don't need 3 characters running around at the same time. Give me my solo adventures. That's what Ys is about. Venturing as a single dude with red hair. Or, I guess in Origin's case, it's not him, but still. But I think this is a great series. It's one of the most consistently fun RPG series that you can always go to it and you always have an expectation of it being fun, and it is. I think it seldom disappoints in that regard. And you also have some of the most kick-ass music in any RPG ever.
Oh yeah, the music's so badass. Just gets you pumped.
It gets crazy in like some games. Like the final boss fights, it feels like a contest of the songs trying to one-up each other for different boss fights.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say like across the board, the music is always a 10 out of 10 in the series. Like, it's so fucking good.
And they're all almost available on Steam now, so there's a lot of places to play them on now.
I still really like E7 though. Fuck you.
He's meant to be like a 10 to 12 hour RPG, not like a 20 to 30 hour grind fest.
It wasn't a grind fest.
You had to do more leveling in that game to get your skills high enough.
That was fun though.
I can kind of see where you're coming from though, because I feel like Ys Memories of Salcedo was like a 25-hour game, and it kind of got it was getting a little stale by the end, whereas like Oath of Falcon and Origin, I felt like they were just right. Like the lengths were perfect.
I always liked the kind of the abruptness of those games. I also really like the shared consistency of like setting and characters across all the games. Like it really comes together, and you kind of get a lot of cool references if you play the games.
Yeah, that stuff's always cool. Yeah.
Well, I haven't beaten Salceda, to be honest. I got really far in it, but for whatever reason, I stopped playing.
That
I need to
game
go back to it.
Terrible. I should just remember this. The final dungeon is in Salceda. I hated. It was so tedious.
Isn't that the one that like warps you around like back, and you have to constantly go back to like the starting point and then go to like another point, and you have to like, keep going back and forth?
On.
What is with bad dungeons and like teleporting characters around? Like, fuck.
Maybe it's just a Japanese design trope.
They need to get rid of it. Next question is by Ned993, and I'll point this out now. She said, "Oh, and I'm a she." So I guess the last time we read her question, I may have accidentally said he. I'm very sorry. But she asks, if you had the resources to make your own full-fledged JRPG/RPG, what would you make? That sounds like it could be its own video. So
that's a really tough question.
Tales of Dragon Ball, done.
Actually, that's actually
I've always wanted a Dragon Ball fighting or Dragon Ball RPG with the graphics of Tales of Vesperia and a combat system like the Tales games, but with Dragon Ball moves instead of the Tales special moves.
I mean, I don't have that strong of an affinity for Dragon Ball, but but even I'm like, yeah, I would play that. That sounds
good. I'd play that.
You know what? I've always wanted a really good samurai RPG.
Way of the Samurai not doing it for you?
See, the thing with Way of the Samurai is it's kind of goofy.
Yeah.
And it's also low budget as fuck, so it's like really janky. I've always thought really and plus I'm thinking turn-based as well. So I would really like there to be like a really cool turn-based samurai RPG.
It would be pretty cool. Yeah, there's not really a whole lot like that.
There was a Samurai Showdown RPG where you actually had to input the fighting game inputs to do the moves. But I think that was like cool. It was like a Japan only game. and I don't think it ever got a fan translation. So there is possibility.
That's a shame. Well, there was also those fucking Yakuza Samurai games we missed out on. God damn
Learn
it.
Japanese, you nerd.
God damn it. It's not fair.
Just learn an entire language. It's all you have to do.
Oh, that's all.
That's it.
It's not a big deal. You fucking baka gaijin.
If I could make mine RPG, it would suck though.
Why did you say that?
I wouldn't be good at it. But I mean, I tell you, I'd really like another Final Fantasy Tactics from Matsuno without a law system.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
please, no law system.
Take me back before Ivalice was populated by all these weird furries.
Hey, Fran, though, she can
You're
stay.
not wrong. You're not wrong.
Fran can stay.
But I do miss the more politically driven Ivalice and the man versus man conflicts that brought about.
Dreadful Boredom has 3 questions. His first question is, what games have brought about emotions, a line of thoughts similar to Floyd's thoughts of Uncharted and Metal Gear? So basically, overrated? Is that?
I mean, I guess because my rant on Uncharted was pretty intense last time, so I mean that kind of
was. Okay, so for you it was more
over
than just
It was
overrated.
over exaggerated. I will admit here it was over exaggerated. I don't care that much, and Metal Gear, that doesn't really bother me. Like Metal Gear is just not really my thing.
This question kind of falls apart then.
It doesn't really.
Yeah, because you just kind of clarify. It's like, oh, it's just kind of over exaggerating. So I was like, fuck, okay. Nah, fuck this question. Sorry, dude. You got 2 other
Symphonia
questions.
Dawn of the New World. There you go. That got universal answer earlier on.
Yeah, there we go. That's our answer. Question 2 is, what games, movies, etc. that you like has gotten little love nowadays? So basically, underrated games and movies.
Okay.
Treasure Planet, the animated
Ooh.
Disney film. I always feel it got like a 60 on Rotten Tomatoes, and I feel like I've never heard other people talk about it. But I remember growing up to that movie and like watching it whenever I was sick, and I always enjoyed it.
I saw it when I was a kid, but I haven't seen it since. I need to go back to it.
I think it's a fun movie.
I've never seen it. So clearly, I'm part of the problem.
There you go. Freaking probably haven't seen Atlantis either.
I did, actually.
What about the second one?
Okay, no, not the second one.
You don't need to watch the second one.
No, I didn't think I would.
We don't talk about the Disney direct to DVD sequels.
No, those are oh god! I just remembered my sister had a bunch of them growing up. Oh god, they were so
There's, like, the Lion
fucking
King
bad.
2. There's like the multiple Aladdin movies. sequel to
Mermaid
Atlantis.
2 was bad.
Mermaid 2 was
Oh,
Hunchback of Notre Dame 2 was bad.
the first Hunchback of Notre Dame was fucking awesome,
Yeah.
except for the gargoyles. They were kind of dumb, but the rest of the
Needed
movie was
comedic
really good.
relief, man. It was too serious.
Yeah, I guess.
You had a guy like singing about how he's been possessed by a female gypsy demon with like hellfire happening in the background. Like you gotta tone it down for a kids movie.
That shit was metal. It was so
Yeah.
metal. Speaking of which, I'm gonna switch things up. Instead of going with either games or movies, I'm gonna talk about some underrated bands. So a band that I think that doesn't get any fucking love, and it's such a shame, is Pain of Salvation. You guys should definitely give that band a shot. A progressive rock band. They have a very kind of like I think most of their good material has that sort of grit to it. They like to experiment and try like different things though, so some of their albums are a little more hit or miss. They made 2 albums that are basically 70s rock, which was a little weird, but it was still good. but I particularly recommend the albums Remedy Lane, In the Passing Light of Day, which is their newest one. That one was surprisingly really good. And The Perfect Element. I think those are their 3 best albums. So give that band a chance. They're really underappreciated. Like, nobody fucking talks about them, and they make really great music. You know, Remedy Lane especially, I think, might be my favorite. Remedy Lane is an awesome CD. All of them are concept albums. So if that's your jam, like, this band is for you. Like, they make some really good stuff. So what about you, Floyd?
For movies, I'm gonna pick something that, I mean, I see a lot of hate for it, this movie, but I don't know. I think people are starting to kind of forget about it, but I think the movie Cloud Atlas is like a masterpiece. Like, it's I think it's
Never
like
seen it.
it's a
like
brilliant
4 hours long?
hours. It's pretty long. I think that's one of the things people don't like about it. I loved every second of it. I thought it was like one of the most ambitious, thrilling sci-fi movies I've seen in a long time. I just, I don't know. I think that movie doesn't get enough credit for how inventive it was. Games. I was reminded of this game on Twitter, actually. Someone was talking about it. Shining Force 3 on the Saturn. Like, it was like basically the last Shining Force game. Unfortunately, we never got the second or third parts in North America, but a lot of people haven't played it simply because it's on the Sega Saturn and it's super expensive now. But it's like, it's probably one of my favorite strategy RPGs. I loved it. I thought it had like an excellent story to it. The gameplay was awesome. I liked it a hell of a lot more than Panzer Dragoon Saga, actually, which I've always thought was kind of overrated. But I think that game, it's a shame that's not accessible because it's like a really good game.
It is, and Sega will take down all your videos about it, apparently.
Oh, I remember that shit.
Yeah, I
was a
remember
whole
that.
deal.
God,
Also,
that's
on the
when-
topic of... Yeah, go ahead.
No, yeah, I was just gonna say, like, that was when Sega's douchebaggery was, like, off the charts, man.
Pulled a bit of a Nintendo back there.
You're not even wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
You're not even wrong.
But I was going to say, on the topic of, like, obscure strategy RPGs, I just recalled a game I picked up on a whim years ago for the DS called Rondo of Swords, which is
That's a pretty good name.
It's an Atlas published strategy RPG where your characters, instead of lining up your enemies next to units, you have to drag them through them. And you can move through enemy units. Your goal is to get enemies like lined up in lines or blocks so you can go through as many as possible. And if you can run through your own units, you get like a buff. And it's a really interesting RPG. It's really difficult at the start, but if you stick with it, you can get through it pretty quickly. And it's got very drastic multiple pathways depending on choices you make in the story. And you can get like radically different endings and different characters. And it's pretty neat.
I remember seeing that game in stores like a long time ago, but I never picked it up. I should have actually looked at it more. So that does sound pretty interesting. There's a lot of weird RPGs on the DS actually that are kind of like hidden gems, sort of. There's another one called like Knights in the Nightmare, which was always kind of interesting.
That also got a PSP port, I believe.
Yeah, it did.
I tried playing that PSP port and I literally could not figure it out. And I was just like, what? How does this game work? A game had never confounded me to such a degree before. I was like, what the fuck is this?
I've heard that, yeah. My only similar thing was, I know a lot of people love this game, but Dragon Force on the Saturn, I could not wrap my head around that game. I had no idea how you were supposed to play it.
It's probably still better than the band.
Oh man, I hate Dragon Force. Yeah, they suck.
Yeah. All their songs sound the same.
They had a good run, Guitar Hero.
Yeah, they only really got popular because of that. And then, like, no
Yeah.
one cared.
Just the infamy.
His last question is thoughts about people who started loving your hobbies, games, anime, comics, when they thought it was originally childish or ridiculed it and you for it.
Ooh, can I take this one to start?
Go ahead.
Because I have a perfect example. I have a friend named Justin. Shouts to Justin. Fuck you, you're a troll. He's a troll in real life. He's a super troll, but he constantly trolls us. But he used to shit on anything that was like loosely related to anime or like Japanese like media in general. And I got him to watch all of Fate Zero and all of Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, and not completely, but I turned him around pretty hardcore to the point where he will watch anime series on his own now. And he actually does enjoy them and like them. So I used to go, I took a guy that would just go, oh, that stupid weeb shit, and like just not give it a chance, and actually got him to appreciate some shows.
Fate Zero's a really good choice.
Although I will say FMA Brotherhood was more effective than Fate Zero for him. He did enjoy Fate Zero, though.
That's interesting, because I find FMA Brotherhood way more of a weeby type of show.
I think it was kind of the ratio of kind of comedy, action, and plot, whereas Fate Zero is very, very heavy in the plot at the start, so it's a bit more comprehensive to get into, I suppose.
Yeah.
It kind of requires more in the viewer.
Thing is, I hate the comedy in Full Alchemist Brotherhood.
There's some of it's hit and miss.
Yeah, and the original Full Alchemist wasn't much better in terms of comedy. It's just this like really juvenile, like over the top, like goofy faces and shit, and it's like constant jokes about how short Edward is. It's like gets old. But I mean, whatever. The rest of the shows are great. But
you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of like a person that I know personally that originally was like, man, fuck that weeby shit, and then I got him into it. But if we're talking about the question in general, I think it's a good thing that people did change their minds, because I always think of it like this: it's never too late to get into a good thing. So even if they may have been like closed-minded about it at first, the fact that they eventually did give it a chance, I think, is overall a good thing. It's because I think part of the problem is that some people like to act like elitists, and that can push people away. So I think the more we are like accepting of other people into our hobbies, the easier it is for other people. And, maybe if we were all learn to be more accepting. I sound like I'm preaching here or something, but I'm just trying to say, like, stop acting like dicks and, accept people more. Maybe they'll be more accepting of us, I guess. I don't fucking know.
I don't know. You like E7 a lot, man. I don't know.
That's not. I sounded so fucking cheesy right now. What the fuck? What happened to me?
I mean, to be fair, right now we're in like a really cynical phase of like the internet, where everyone's being elitist, or everyone's saying, "I liked the thing before you did, so I'm better. I'm better at liking the thing than you are." There's a lot of that going on.
That kind of shit wears me down after a while.
Yeah, it's dumb.
No, yeah.
Yeah, how do you feel about this, Floyd?
I feel pretty much the same as you. I don't really have much to add to it, actually. But there's not really been anyone I know that like did with games and movies and stuff like that and looked at it as childish or ridiculed me for it. I've actually never been in that situation. I mean, the closest thing is like growing up, because like growing up, I lived in an area where like no one really played video games, and if you did, like you were like the nerd. But then later, it actually it started to becoming more accepted, I feel, and just like it wasn't like that nerdy thing that people looked at anymore. But that's a whole different thing. Doesn't really have much to do with this question, though.
Okay. Next question is by Real Mid Boss. He asks, "What are your impressions of .hack.gu last recode based on the images and news about it?" So I've actually played the original games, and I think having an HD re-release by itself would have been cool. But the fact that they're also adding like an extra story thing, I think is pretty neat. I don't know how well the game holds up though, just because I haven't played those games since they released, which I was in high school at the time, and I always say this, but I don't trust high school version of me, and neither should you.
This is like a compilation of those 4.hack games on PS2, right? Although isn't there like more than 4 of them?
Okay,
I don't even
so
know.
I need to explain. So there's the original infection, mutation, outbreak, and quarantine.
Okay, those are the ones that I'm thinking of. But it's not
these are the ones that you're thinking of, but these are not the ones that are getting the HD re-release. This is the sequel series, .hack GU, which takes place like a few years afterwards, and it has a story that's like tangentially connected, but it's mostly its own thing with its own new characters and a new battle system. For all intents and purposes, because I actually did play through I beat infection, mutation, outbreak, almost beat quarantine, but quarantine was... By then I was tired of it. I was just like, I don't want to fucking play this shit anymore. But GU is way better. Those older games are pretty bad. You know, the story moves at snail's pace and the combat sucks. GU's story is not much better, to be honest, but at least the combat's actually like a lot better. And I remember the characters being a lot more likable and had a lot more personality to them. I remember the characters in the original .hack series being pretty fucking flat. So yeah, I'd say this I wouldn't say this is anything to like get super excited about, but I mean, I'd still say it's pretty cool. Like, between the two series that they could have brought to HD, they brought the correct one. They brought the better one. So there is that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm probably not going to ever play it, but it's cool. It's cool that they're actually doing it.
Well, it's going to be on Steam, so like if it's on sale one day, you know, it might be worth checking out for $20. You're getting like 4 games for the price of one.
I mean, at the price point they're launching it at, I feel like it's a pretty great steal considering how much of a collector's item the GU games have become over the years. Like it would cost like possibly hundreds of dollars to buy all 3 games and play them now. And I never actually got to finish them. I lost my save file on I was playing an emulated version of the games because those prices are pretty high, and I'd lost my save file going into the 3rd game, so I never got to see the proper conclusion. So I'm definitely interested in checking this out.
Are the GU games more expensive than the original 4? Because I remember the original 4, especially that Quarantine. I remember that one is really expensive.
I don't know between the 2 ones. I think the original might be slightly more expensive just because it's 4 games.
Yeah, I think the original is more expensive, but the GU ones are still pretty pricey.
And everyone gets to hang out with everybody's favorite edgelord, Hiseo, the Terror of Death.
Oh God!
The PKK.
Oh God!
The player killer.
I remember someone in a review literally said something like, he better watch out for all those PKKKs.
I still remember the frickin' anime of GU, Roots, the origin story, when they show off that scene where he becomes the Terror of Death. And I was just like rolling my eyes.
Yeah, that anime was not good.
It was very slow.
The music, though...
I mean, the music in .hack in general is just transcendent.
Yeah, but in .hack Roots especially, like, the music almost made up for the show. Like, it was really that good. You know what, forget the show, just buy the soundtrack for Roots. Like, it's really good. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of cool. I'll pick it up for sure, but probably out of nostalgia, but not because I'm like super excited to play it again. I kind of do, but yeah, I don't know. I think people are kind of overreacting.
Is it going to get a physical release? Do you know?
Yeah, it is actually for PS4.
Cool.
So yeah, it's going to be on PS4 physically and digitally, and it's going to be on Steam, which is pretty neat. Now, next up we have Matt Wheaton. He asks, thoughts on Xenogears? I haven't played it, so
It's a cool game.
I'm out. I want to play it because like everyone raves about it, and everyone's like, "This is the best fucking PS1 RPG."
I mean, I've never fully finished it just because of the length and just stuff happening in life, but it's really cool and how they progress through the story and how it all comes together. And being a fan of mecha and like martial arts anime, there's a lot of appeal in that alone with Xenogears, and I always liked RPGs where you have a mech and you get to customize your mech a bit.
Okay. Xenogears is awesome. I love it. It's not my favorite PS1 RPG. It's up there though. It's probably in my top 3, probably like number 3 or something. It's definitely long. Like, it took me like 60 hours to beat, but the story is pretty confusing, but it is really enjoyable. I really do like it. It's the second disc definitely has some problems. The way the story is told is not ideal. But it's not as horrible as some people make it out to be. I don't think it like ruins the game or anything.
It definitely gets overblown, what people say about the second disc.
The gameplay is actually, I think, is probably one of the more underrated things about that game. Like, I think the battle system is actually really good. Like, I love the dual battle system where you have the on foot battle system, and then you have the mech battle system where you customize your mechs, and you have like fuel meters you have to keep track of. I thought the bosses were really cool and clever. I like the world, like the exploration is nice. It's got some really cool side quests.
Also,
like the
that
writing
music
is really good. Yeah, the music soundtrack is like god tier. It's a fantastic game. Like, it's definitely something that pretty much any RPG fan needs to play.
So, Shintai, ball's in your court now.
Well, I actually promised a friend of mine, the completionist, not the bearded guy.
Yeah, I'm glad you clear. I'm like, wait a minute.
I'm not friends with him.
He wasn't your guest.
Yeah, no, another guy, the original completionist.
There you go.
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny. The bearded completionist approached my friend, the completionist, was like, "Hey, can I buy your channel?" And he was like, "Sorry, dude, I like my channel. You know, you can't have it." And he's like, "Oh, okay, don't worry about it." So that was interesting. But anyways, my friend, the completionist, actually asked me to review Xenogears because it's his favorite game of all time. So I will inevitably play this game because I have to honor this request by my good friend. So there you go. The next question is, any 80s and 90s anime you guys enjoy? I kind of feel like I only enjoy 80s and 90s anime at this point.
I was gonna say, I'm like, isn't that like kind of everyone's wheelhouse? I mean, they're looking for particular titles.
If you want like a recommendation, like a really easy one is Berserk. Like, if you haven't seen Berserk, I mean, just take care of that right now and make sure it is the one from the 90s. Don't confuse it with the movies. Don't confuse it with the currently airing anime, which is trash. Make sure you watch the one from the 90s. I guess as for 80s anime, I'm not as well versed with 80s anime, but I guess if I had to pick a favorite, it would probably be a Gundam one. So probably Gundam.
I'm like, you could cheat this question super hard and say like 90% of Gundam.
Most of the Gundam anime that came out in the 80s were all like top notch. Mm-hmm. So
Zeta Gundam,
but like
especially is
Zeta Gundam, I'm gonna say because the original came out in '79, so it doesn't count.
Technically, yes. I mean, technically, it was like 2000s was the first time it came out in North America, right? So I guess it doesn't fully count. Yeah,
well, I guess he's talking more like originally released in the 80s, not when it came over here. Although I think the movie trilogy came out in the 80s. So there you go. The original Mobile Suit Gundam movie trilogy. Even though I do prefer the original series, the movie trilogy is still a great way to experience that original story. So what about you, Darren?
One thing that comes particular to me when I think about 80s and 90s is the original Dragon Ball. I won't go to
Yeah,
Dragon Ball Z
classic.
territory since that's just too mainstream, and I think everyone knows about it at this point. But I really think the original gets underappreciated in this day and age. And I think the animation itself actually holds up really well, especially because it doesn't get as bloated as a Z does. It's like a roughly, I think it's like 60 something episodes, so it's a bit tighter that way, and it's a bit more standalone.
The original Dragon Ball also feels like an adventure. Like,
Yeah, that's why I when for the RPG question I said Dragon Ball, because that way I think it suits the RPG aspect a lot better.
Yeah, you know what? You totally sold me on that even harder now that you've clarified.
And then you can get different fighting styles in there with like the pole, or you can get the just like fist fighting, or you know, you can do all sorts of stuff there. Or fighting on the Nimbus. Bam.
That would be pretty
Goku's
cool.
the new Ludger.
What about you, Floyd? I mean, I know you're not like super into anime, but do you know of any 80s or 90s anime you could think of that you like?
Berserk's the one that comes at the top of my head. It's still my favorite anime I've seen. It was like pretty much the first one.
Yeah, no, that's a good answer. Can't argue with that.
Shout outs the original JoJo OVA.
Yeah, that OVA is pretty cool. I mean,
and shout outs to the English dub, which is super weird.
I don't think I saw it dubbed.
You should check it out.
I might have to do that.
A very literal dub where they keep all the suffixes and prefixes in. Both big American voice acting, and it's pretty funny.
So, like, one of them is like, Jotaro-kun!
Literally, there's a line where it's like, Joestar-san! Are you okay? or there's the part with Kakyoin when he gets hit in the eyes, and it's like, his eyes! They hit his eyes! It's really great. Although I do actually like the English voice actor for Dio in that version.
I remember the Japanese voice actor for Dio was fucking awesome in that one.
He also sounded super old.
Yeah, he did.
It's very radically different from the modern adaptation.
Where he just sounds crazy, which is also perfect.
I mean, it works.
Right. Now, Matt's last question is favorite RPG final boss.
Ooh, that's a tough.
Yeah,
I'm weird in a sense where like a lot of final bosses in RPGs tend to be really annoying to me. I don't know why. I don't know. I always get that when I'm at the end of an RPG, I just always want to see the ending. Sometimes final bosses can like annoy me for some reason. Favorite though.
I mean, favorite can mean anything in this case. Like it may not necessarily mean like a final boss that's like totally fun to fight, but maybe it's one that was like really satisfying, maybe because of the story or something.
I think I know what I'm gonna go with. I'm gonna go with Earthbound. Or no, Mother 3. I'm gonna go Mother 3 final boss. I can't say anything. I can't say anything.
That's the worst part. You can't even explain why it's so great.
Yeah.
How well done it is. But damn, that's like an emotional fight. That's great.
God damn it! I haven't played either of these games. So fuck.
Just play Mother 3. Just do it.
I should. Especially since I beat Undertale. So I mean.
Yeah. You're ready for all the quirk.
I'm still thinking of my answer though. Like shit, I can't think of a.
I'll buy you some time.
Okay.
So I'm a big fan. I want to give kind of like a jokey answer first. I'm a big fan of Hitler from Persona 2.
Nice.
I kinda, like it seems like lately I've been talking about that all the time. Wherever I'm in, whatever contact, I was like, man, that's a dope like final fight. You just fight Hitler in Persona 2. But I always liked that just because of how crazy it is. But I also really, really like the final fight of Persona 3. I always thought that was like a really well done thematic fight.
Oh yeah.
Like the music's perfect, the tone's perfect, and it's just a really satisfying fight, and it's one of those fights that can take a long time and can kind of be annoying, but I just think it works so well in the story context and how they drill in how you're not supposed to be able to overcome this, but you keep fighting. I think it's handled really well.
I think I'm gonna go, not because I think the boss is particularly a great final boss, but just because it was like really memorable for me, and that's the final boss of Final Fantasy VIII.
Yeah, well, I kind of broke the game, so it was really easy. I love the final dungeon, though.
Like, the final boss for me was like super memorable just because that boss has really annoying abilities where it can like banish your characters into like nothingness and like into time and space or whatever. And it can also like seal away certain abilities of yours. So like that, like you can get really unlucky and that fight can just like totally screw you over. And by the end of that fight, like my squall had, very low health. Both of my team members were like banished to oblivion. And I was like, I could use this turn to like heal up. Or I can just say fuck it and use my my limit break. Fuck it, let's just go with the limit break. And then, because most of the time, when you use the limit break, Squall does his I think it's called Rough Divide attack, where like his gunblade becomes so huge, like it could be seen on the surface of the earth, and he slashes down, which is like his second strongest, but his actual strongest is his Lionheart. And I got lucky, and Lionheart was the one that was activated, and that was just enough for me to beat the final boss. So that for me was just like a super memorable moment of just like literally it was just Squall, really low on health. The whole team is just like banished into like time and space. And it was this clutch moment. And I fucking just lucked out and won.
It's one of those super memorable close encounter fights that will always stick with you.
Yeah. So even if like the boss itself may not be like, thinking back on it, it's a pretty cheap boss, but that's just such like so close to my heart. It's just like it's special.
Also, I want to shout out to Lavos from Chrono Trigger, because that's a great one.
That's a pretty good one.
C6 has an awesome final boss.
I haven't played Final Fantasy VI yet.
It's got some
Forgetting
good music for that one too.
Yeah, there's a lot of classic RPGs I've missed out on. Instead, I wasted my childhood on weird ones like Guardians Crusade on the PS1, which is
that's oof.
not great.
Yeah, one of those kids.
I mean, I had what I had, man.
Yeah, fair enough.
And these are the final two questions. Man, you guys sent a lot of fucking questions. Thank you so much. This last question is by Salazar Naruto 52. His first question is, what is the worst games you played last generation? Mine would easily be Asura's Wrath. I have never forced myself harder to finish a game than this game. A very close second is GTA 4. Those are some pretty high profile games for them to be like the worst ones you played.
Surprised me. I feel like a lot of people like that game, but GTA 4 has gotten a huge backlash now since it came out. Like, people hate that game now.
It's the popularity reversal thing that happens like all the time with like some of the biggest profile releases that people turn around on.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to the last generation, I mean, I kind of sometimes have a bad habit of conflating like most my most hated with what I actually think is the worst, because like I think my most hated game of last generation is probably Metal Gear Solid 4 because of how disappointing it was. What, you like that game?
That was the first Metal Gear Solid game I played. That's what got me into the series.
It's like the worst way to get into the series.
I've had this conversation many a time. It is not the best way to get into the series.
I can't even imagine what it would be like to play Metal Gear Solid 4.
Let's just say I quickly returned to my local EB Games and I purchased the Metal Gear Essentials collection shortly after beating 4 so I could figure out what was happening.
And you still couldn't figure it out.
Well, the weirder part was I then went backwards through those games. I played it 3, 2, 1.
Oh, that is weird.
Because I hated the top-down camera originally when I started playing them. So I played 3, which was the subsistence version, which had the behind over-the-shoulder camera. Or behind the shoulder. And
well, 3 is not a bad one to start with since it is a prequel.
Yeah. And then 2, I just preferred the controls to 1. But I eventually did it.
I'm still trying to think, like, because MGS4 is not, like, a fair pick.
Like, I know for me, this last generation is when I was obsessed with achievements on Xbox 360. I was like, it was a bad time. So I played a lot of terrible games just for achievements. I'm not proud of it, but I did. And the one that always jumps out at me is a game called Vampire Rain.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I've heard of that one.
Like, that game was abysmal. Like, the controls were horrendous. It was like one of those stealth games where if you got caught by an enemy, you died immediately. You could do nothing about it, and you'd go back like an hour. Like, the checkpoints were so few and far between. It looked horrible. The soundtrack was really bad. The combat was so janky. Everything was so janky. Like, the story was trash. It was just like there was no redeemable qualities with that game. It was just terrible. I played through the whole thing for fucking achievements. Ugh, it was bad.
All right, I just came up with an answer. It's got to be the first Neptunia game. That game is a piece of shit.
Oh, but you're talking about the original version.
The original,
of it, right?
Yeah,
original. Okay. Yeah, because there was the remake, right?
Right. I mean, I don't like the Neptunia series, like, in general, because I think they're a bunch of lazy, slapdash, fucking, like, pieces of shit, because they're all basically using the same assets. The games themselves are reusing the same assets already, and then the sequels are reusing those assets again. So it's like, oh, it's fucking lazy and bad. But like, that first Neptunia game was so janky and awful.
Of the first one, like, I played through it. It was like as mediocre as you can possibly get for a JRPG. Like, everything about it was so low budget and just like, ugh. I was like vowed never to play another one ever again.
Someone had the most apt description of the Neptunia series that I think back to it, and it's like becomes more and more true the more I think about it. They are the equivalent of RPG sludge.
I can see that. One game that ruined day one purchases for me for last generation was Brink. I remember being
I heard not so good things about that.
I was really excited about it going in, like having parkour, and as I was just getting into like, that's probably like the most I played first person shooters back then. Like after that, because that was kind of post Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 2, and Battlefield Bad Company 2, and those are games I played with my friends. And I had convinced a friend of mine to pick up Brink with me day one. We bought it, we slapped it in, and the game was like broken at launch. It was horrible. There was like no single player content, and it just was abysmal pretty much throughout its entire life. And it just burned me on day one purchases ever since then. And I have always, whenever I look at that game on like, because sometimes on Steam, they'll just cycle through random games like, hey, recommended for you, Brink. And I'm like, no, fuck you. Don't you ever show me this again. Do you ever come near my family again, Brink?
Don't ever talk to me or my son ever again.
Yeah, literally. Like it is not a good game.
For that, I'm surprised I never played it because that was when I was obsessed with achievements. I would have. It seems like something I would have at least tried, but I never
It
did.
might have been hard to get achievements for that because it was like all multiplayer based.
Stay away from a lot of the online multiplayer games because you had to like grind out achievements on those. It was always a pain.
I'm glad I never became that obsessed with achievements.
It was like I played like stuff like Two Worlds is a game that gets a lot of shit. I actually liked it. I'm like a crazy person apparently for that.
That game was a mess. They hyped up. I remember my friend was so stoked on that game, and he was trying to show me how cool it was, and he like broke the final boss and like fell through the game world. Wow, what a great game!
It's a bad game, but for whatever reason, I liked it. I don't know. It was bizarre.
So every Tuesday, you go back to it and you relive Two World Tuesdays. For those that don't know, that's a feature IGN did. Every Tuesday, they would have like a video preview or some sort of big coverage of Two Worlds up till its release.
Wow.
Yeah, that game had tons of hype. It was supposed to be like the Elder Scrolls killer.
Controversial opinion. I do think it's actually better than Oblivion.
I don't know if I can stand on that side of history with you.
I had more fun playing it, I think. I kind of like the RPG systems.
I could see there's some fun to be had there.
But did you play Two Worlds 2?
I did. Yep. Like as much. It got better reviews, but I don't know, for whatever reason it didn't stick with me as much.
So you are you serious? You preferred the shittier game?
I did, for some reason. I don't know why. But like this was like it was a weird time for me, like the achievement days. I just play every game almost, and just like a lot of shitty games, and some I would like.
You know what? I take back my previous answer. I just thought of a game that's way worse. Fucking Genji Days of the Blade.
Yeah, we talked about this in the previous.
Ooh,
that game is a real piece of shit. Like, because Neptunia is just kind of like fucking dumb and stupid and really mediocre. That Genji Days of the Blade is like infuriating to play. Like that game, that for the uninitiated, this is the giant enemy crab game. Like, oh my god, just thinking about how frustrating the platforming becomes in that game. Like, I feel like I'm suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder just like thinking about it. Like, it was that bad. But anyways, moving on to the next question. The final question. What's your favorite saga from Dragon Ball Z? He goes on to say mine would be the Android/Cell saga. SSJ to Teen Gohan for the win.
So he's combining two sagas.
Yes.
Huh.
I guess, I don't know. I mean, I haven't watched Dragon Ball literally since I was like 10. So.
Same.
So, I mean, it's hard for me to say, like, which is my favorite saga because, like, it's just been so long since I watched it. But I guess the Frieza saga, I guess I would have to say, just because, like, it's the one that stuck with me the most, I guess.
Yeah.
It definitely had the most reruns of any saga.
I remember even as a kid thinking, like, holy shit, there's like 20 episodes dedicated to this one fight with Frieza.
Yeah.
I remember going to like YTV in Canada and just going after school to watch it. It would air the same episode like 2 days in a row. And I'm like, come on, I want to see what happens. Frieza said the planet would explode in 5 minutes. What's going to happen?
Yeah, I remember. I remember he would be counting down. It's like, you only have 4 minutes, and then like 3 episodes would go by. You only have 3 minutes. Like, wait, what?
Frickin' Hunter x Hunter did that way worse. They have like 2 episodes that take place, and you find out that those only actually took 2 minutes in real time. And you're like, wait, what?
Oh, that's nuts.
I just did the same thing. I watched it on YTV as well. That's funny. Watching Dragon Ball Z after the Frieza saga, honestly. But it's so memorable to me because I remember like coming home from school every day and watching it episode by episode, and the fight would just still be continuing on 10 episodes later. It's like, when is this gonna end? And then I think when the final episode of the battle, like a lot of people, like their power went out. I always remember, so people like really pissed off the next day. I don't know, a lot of memories with that, but I guess that's why I'd have to go with the Frieza.
Yeah, just whenever I think back to Dragon Ball Z, I'm like, yeah, it's the Frieza stuff that really sticks out to me.
I mean,
also remember that
Frieza's
really
like the de facto villain of the series.
Yeah. I also remember randomly, like, there was this one episode where, like, Piccolo was charging up and Frieza was just waiting, allowing him to charge up. And he was just like, "Whoa!" And he's just like charging up, and Frieza's just like, yeah, okay, I'll let you do your little charging or whatever. I'm like, really? You're just gonna let him do that? Okay.
Dragon Ball in a nutshell. You're gonna let him do that? Yeah. Vegeta, you're really gonna let Cell absorb Android 18? Yeah. Vegeta, you're really gonna let Majin Buu do this? Yeah. I want to see how strong he gets.
I think that's more Goku, right?
Well, now it is. Goku's passed on that torch, or he has that torch pretty hardcore. But I'd agree with the answer they provide with the Android and the Cell Saga are both excellent. I'd give the slight preference to Cell Saga because I think it has the best Super Saiyan transformation with Gohan going Super Saiyan 2. And it has like the cool moment of kind of the torch being passed on, and you can kind of see how Toriyama wanted the series to end there. And I think that would have been the best concluding point for the series.
I'm pretty sure he wanted to end a lot earlier than that.
Oh, he did. But the Cell Saga he wrote to be the end, and then Boo happened.
Yeah, and then they were like, no, you must make more money.
Pretty much. I think Shonen Jump, like back pretty much up until the original run ended, just kept egging him on to do it because it was too popular.
Oh yeah, people ate it up.
Also, Future Trunks is in both those arcs, so that automatically gives it an edge.
So we come to the final segment of the podcast. I need to ask, because I forgot to ask, Floyd, did you have a chance to finish Area 88?
Fortunately, I only got to see half of the last act, I guess you'd call it. Unfortunately, I just didn't have enough time. But I've seen most of it, though.
Right, so do you want to talk about what you've seen, at least?
Yeah, we might as well.
All right, for the sake of clarity, like, how much exactly did you see?
So this was...
So you saw, like, Acts 1 and 2, right?
Yeah, basically. And then, how much did I see of Act 3? Shit. Don't know exactly. I forget where I stopped. That's the thing.
Okay, well, I guess we'll talk about more about what happens in Acts 1 and 2 then.
Okay.
So, I know Darren actually went above and beyond. He didn't have to do this, but Darren went ahead and watched Area 88 to completion. And, dude, you didn't have to do that. That was really cool of you.
Yeah, I got into it. I wanted to see how they wrapped it up.
It's good, right?
Yeah, I actually really enjoyed it. It kind of reminded me, because I'm a big fan of the Ace Combat games, and it kind of reminded me of like a really cool Ace Combat anime.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I never really played the Ace Combat games, but yeah, that makes sense.
It's definitely very similar to the idea of them doing kind of the ludicrous stuff. It's still within like the realm of realism, but it's kind of like the fact that like they go upside down, shoot bombs off of like a carrier plane is something that you would totally. That's totally like a mission in like a Ace Combat game. So it definitely has the vibe going, especially with the Ace pilots.
Oh, cool. So I need to ask Floyd, based on what you've seen at least, like, have you been enjoying it?
I dig it for the most part. I feel like it's, I don't know, it's weird. I don't know if it's like, I don't know, too long for what they're trying to like for the story I guess they're trying to tell, but it's maybe that the pacing is a little, I don't know, it's hard to watch like too much of it at one time for whatever reason. Like I have to kind of take breaks from it, even though I actually do like it. And I guess it does remind me of a lot of like war movies I've seen. Like it's got like that war theme going on, but there's some interesting aspects to it that I think are kind of interesting. Like from the start, like I thought it was kind of interesting how he gets tricked into joining the I guess it's what's like
The mercenary
The
group.
Foreign
a group.
Legion.
Yeah, like how he's tricked into getting into there, and like the only way to leave it was like you have to earn enough money, or you get known as a deserter, which is like really bad. Like you don't want that to happen to you. And then there is what the other way was like. What was the other way?
You have to complete 3 years of service, I believe.
Yeah, 3 years of service, which that I thought was cool. I thought that was kind of interesting. Then it's got, I like the like 80s anime feel it has. The action sequences are really cool. Actually, I actually really enjoyed that, and like the more realistic setting in this as well. And just a lot of like the references like the Vietnam War, and then the psychological state of a lot of the characters in the anime I thought was really cool as well. And then just this big central thing with it, what I kind of liked is he ends up killing like just so many people the longer he's there, and then he starts to like hate himself for what he basically becomes. He becomes like a very miserable person. It's a pretty depressing look at like war and like kind of the effects it has on people, which I've always loved that kind of thing in movies, which I liked.
I also want to say shout outs to every time they say the smell of blood and gunpowder. And every time they say that, take a shot.
They do say that a lot.
Do they? I don't remember.
Well, I watched
Yeah,
I
they
originally
do.
started watching the Japanese sub, and I switched to the English dub, and at least in that version, they definitely say that quite a few times.
In the sub or dub?
The dub.
Oh, okay.
I actually went back and forth between the two for a bit, but then I did stick with the English sub. The English dub is a little, I don't know.
I
It's a little
remember the
cheesy
dub
in
being a
some
bit
spots.
wonky.
I think the main characters are all pretty good, but there's definitely like some of the side characters are pretty goofy.
Yeah, I remember the dub. The actors didn't sound appropriate for the material. It's a pretty serious show, but some of the actors just didn't sound like they were. I wouldn't go as far as say they weren't taking it seriously, but they didn't sound appropriate. I think one of the really interesting things about the show, like you mentioned, is Kazama kind of going through this mental breakdown of him constantly killing day in and day out, and it's just the effect that it's having on him and the degradation of his character throughout the course of the show, I think is kind of the highlight of it. I think it's really fascinating.
One of the interesting things about it is like how dedicated it is to realism, like explaining all like the aircraft and things like that, and like the weapons on them. It's just they really go into the details of that kind of stuff, which some people might be turned off by that, but I actually kind of like it.
Yeah, that is definitely really cool. I also think that Shin's best friend, or ex-best friend, I guess, the one that like tricked him into it, like, dude, what a piece of shit. Like,
Yeah.
he basically destroyed his best friend's life because he was jealous of him, and because he wanted to mac on his girl. Like, god damn.
I actually really didn't understand his end game. Because he seems like throughout the entire show, Kanzaki, the guy who tricks Shin into going to Area 88 and enlisting with their army, he seems to have like this master plan, and then it kind of all just falls apart. I was just so confused because it seems like with all the planning and foresight he had, he could have totally like gotten around it, but I don't know. It seemed like weird, his end game of like what his ultimate goal was.
I think he wanted that pink-haired chick.
I gotta say, that entire shower scene, I was like ready to start screaming at my monitor, being like, "Come on now, really?" After everything, it's been almost 3 years, and now you're gonna frickin' give in to this? Come on! It defeats the whole purpose of making him come home.
I will say though that I don't know, maybe it's just because I'm like kind of picky about that sort of thing, but I wasn't a huge fan of the romance between Shin and that girl.
Well, you don't really get to see much of it.
It's not like
just see how they meet.
That's probably one of the weaker elements to it, I thought.
I really liked how they handled some of the side characters at Area 88, like Mickey, who's like the second best pilot there. I really liked like his backstory about how he used to be like an ace pilot, and he was like a veteran of the Vietnam War, and how he couldn't get rid of the smoke of blood and gunpowder. Once you smell it, you never go back. I just appreciate how he had that normal civilian life, and he just couldn't go back to being a civilian, and how he kind of threw away like this really great life he had because he just lives for combat. I really dug his story, especially with kind of the parallel it has with Shin's story.
Yeah, I like that too, and it's like that's a very common like theme in a lot of war movies, like people that have these normal lives, but then they go to war for a while and they just can't get back into that normal life. It's wars changed them permanently, and they're just like that's all like they live for anymore. It's all like they think about and do.
I also really liked the commander of Area 88, Saki. I really like. You probably didn't get to this point, Lloyd, but at the end of episode or near the end of Act 3, he kind of just dumps down his whole plot to Shin. I thought it was like a really interesting twist to his character. Sort of why he's there and why he's running Area 88.
I'm so glad the two of you dug the show, because like this is like one of those like really obscure animes that not a lot of people have heard of. So I'm just glad to be able to share the love.
Yeah, I was actually only familiar with this entire series because of UN Squadron for the Super Nintendo, which is like a localized version of an arcade game based off of Area 88.
Yeah. I remember Floyd mentioning it as well when I had brought it up to him.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much. Or actually, I'm not sure I actually knew about it. I think I was looking up Area 88 and I found that. I was like, wait, really? Because I'd always heard about it, UN Squadron, but.
I also appreciate how often whenever they show footage of them using their guns on their jets and they fired another jet, you just see the bullets tearing through the pilot, and you're like, "Oh, damn!" Like as someone who's played the Ace Combat games, you definitely don't think about that when you're gunning down the enemy pilots. You're kind of just thinking about like, "Yeah, I got one down. Time to move on to the next target." Yeah, they go all out. I also want to say I'm not going to talk about it, but I really enjoyed the ending of
the ending.
Series.
Not to go into any detail, but yeah, the ending is very. It's not what you would expect.
Yeah, I would definitely describe it as unexpected.
Okay, yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
I remember when the credits started rolling, I was like, "Holy shit! They ended it like that? Like, there's nothing more? That's it?" I was like, "Holy shit!"
Like the first thing I looked up, I'm like, is like the other adaptations of this different? Like,
yeah,
they ended it this way.
Like it's an ambiguous ending. Like I think some people would be disappointed by the kind of lack of finality in a certain way, but like I think it's actually more powerful the way that they ended it the way they did.
Definitely. I think it works to great effect, especially because I think the events that lead up to it give you enough finality there.
Yes.
And if you kind of make your own judgments based off of how characters act and how the story progresses to that point, you can understand where the logical conclusions would have to be.
Kind of my thought process on what makes a good character is not necessarily whether you agree with that character's actions, but more so that those characters' actions are consistent with how you've come to understand them up to that point. And I really feel that ending, his actions is the culmination of his character up to that point.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
All right, so I know you're not done with Area 88 yet. So do you want me to recommend you the next anime anyways, or do you want to finish it first?
Yeah. No, it's I don't have much left anyways, so and I think it just makes more sense
Okay, and
to
if you want
recommend
the
it
next
now.
episode, you can like still give your final thoughts on Area 88 and kind of like put a cap to it.
Yes.
Okay. So I've been recommending you like some really short animes or some movies to kind of like make it easier for you to kind of get into the swing of things with anime. So now I want to try and recommend you a series, but it would be unrealistic to expect you to watch like a full 25 episode series before the next episode. And that would be kind of unfair as well. So all I'm going to ask of you is to try to watch between 3 to 5 episodes. And based on those 3 to 5 episodes, you can decide whether you want to continue watching or not. Does that sound fair?
Yeah. Now, yeah, and I think this is something I've done with TV shows as well. I feel like if you watch at least 5 to 6 or 4 to 5 episodes of a TV series, that's that's a point where you can, I think, properly judge as to whether you want to see the rest of the series if you like it
Okay.
enough from there.
So this next one I'm going to recommend, and Darren, you should watch it too. I've actually recommended it to you before. I don't know if you've watched it yet, but it's one of my absolute most favorite anime called Gungrave.
Oh yes,
Right.
we had this conversation before.
Yeah, I think we had it on like one of your podcast episodes. Actually, I remember mentioning it. It's like it's so good. Watch it.
Yeah. It's like Berserk.
It is like Berserk. So like, except it's not like a medieval fantasy, but it's more like The Godfather. I will have to warn you though that the first episode is kind of rough, because like the first episode kind of gives this impression that like it's this dumb schlocky like weird sci-fi action show. It seems weird,
kind of like Berserk.
Yes, but then episode 2 starts in a flashback, and then the rest of the show is leading up back to episode 1. So you have like a full understanding of what happens. And episode 2 is going to feel like a huge like dynamic shift. It's like not even going to feel like the same show. And that's when the show like truly starts. And if you aren't hooked by the end of episode 2, I'd be very shocked. I think the ending of episode 2 is like sobering. Like that, the end of that episode is like, whoa, shit is getting real. That first episode, gotta warn you, it's a bit rough, but trust me, like it gets so much better. The sci-fi stuff is not as pronounced as it may seem. Like in the first episode, it comes off as kind of like a weird show, and then when it goes into the flashback, and then the show leads back into episode 1, it slowly integrates that back into the story in a way that doesn't seem quite as like weird, and you have more of an understanding. It's like, oh, okay, so this is where this comes from. And I also have to say that like, the ending of the show might be one of my favorite endings, period. This has one of the best endings I have ever seen. Not just for an anime, but just in general. The end, like that final episode, I would almost go as far as say is perfect. Like in terms of tone, the dialogue, like what happens, like it's just absolute perfection. If you really loved Berserk, like this has, while not coming off as a ripoff, it still very much feels like its own thing. It does have shades of Berserk. Like it does feel like it's not borrowing per se, but you do feel some of that inspiration from it, but doing its own thing with it. It's a pretty great show in my opinion.
Okay, that's high praise. Yeah, it's funny that Berserk is actually still my favorite anime that I've seen. It was like the first one.
I'm not going to say that Gungrave is going to overthrow Berserk. I think Berserk is the better show. But I think of the anime that I've recommended you, I think Gungrave will be up there. The only thing is that like the sci-fi element that gets integrated back into the show later on may or may not rub you the wrong way, which is understandable. But I would still argue that like what makes the show great basically overshadows and makes up for that.
Okay, so yeah, I actually very curious about that, the sci-fi element, to see what I think of it.
Yeah, like I think the core of the show is the relationship between Brandon and Harry. Like that is the crux of the show, and that is what makes it like truly great. Similar to like in Berserk, the relationship between Guts and Griffith is like what makes that show great.
No. It's all about Guts and Corcus. That's the real relationship to keep an eye out for. Yeah.
Oh, that's the OTP.
The real rivalry.
But yeah, I want to really thank you for coming on, man. Thank you for being our first guest. You know, real pleasure having you on. Because you're just such an awesome dude.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for both the kind words and having me on, especially as the first guest. It was a great honor, and I've enjoyed the show so far, so it's been great to be on.
Thank you. That's great to hear. Now, to kind of send us off, why don't you go ahead and, plug yourself again so everyone, just in case, they need it, so they know where to find you. Go ahead and plug yourself.
Just in case people need to find the place where you talk about ink holes, you got to go to. Oh, I still can't get over that. But
dude, that was like perfect. Just like, yeah. Mwah, what a beautiful spicy meatball.
Yeah, pretty much. I think we were like saying something similar to that while we were recording. We're like, damn, this went in a great direction. But if you want to check out my podcast, it's the Gaming Pilgrimage Podcast, which should be available on most podcast-based services like SoundCloud, Podbean, iTunes. It should all be there. If not, just check out SoundCloud. It's all stored there. Otherwise, I have the YouTube channel, The Gaming Pilgrimage. Hopefully, I'll have that Fire Emblem Fates review out within the next week. And I also have a Twitch, which is the same, The Gaming Pilgrimage. And sometimes I stream games. And that is it for me. Thanks again for having me on, guys. It's been a real pleasure. And I also want to thank you, Shintai, for the recommendation of Area 88, because I really enjoyed it.
I'm glad you enjoyed it, because as I mentioned before, it's just this kind of little obscure anime that not a lot of people have heard of. So I'm just glad that I can show it to new people and get as much enjoyment out of it as I did.
Yeah, it answers that earlier question.
Yeah.
Although I guess I wasn't really ridiculing this. I just didn't know what it was. But it kind of works.
It works out in its own way. All right, that's it, everyone. This was episode 5 of the Final Bosses podcast. We'll try to put out another episode, because this one took a while to come out. We're sorry about that. Shit happens. Real life, gets in the way. Hopefully, episode 6 won't take as long. But anyways, thank you so much. Take care, everyone.